I'm Peter and I'm the author of Mindfulness in 3D, the Alexander technique for the 21st century. I was saddened to hear the news recently that the poet Mary Oliver had died. A line from one of her poems influenced my life. It was, "Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?" In my work teaching the Alexander technique, teaching three-dimensional mindfulness, I help people take control of their lives. F.M. Alexander said that his technique gives us a way to resist, conquer, and then govern the circumstances of our lives, and essentially that's what I'm teaching. Sadly, if you type Alexander technique into Google and skim down the top 10, 20 results, you'll see a lot about posture and movement, but little about changing behaviour, arguably the more valuable and life-changing side to it. The NHS website says the Alexander technique teaches improved posture and movement, which is believed to help reduce and prevent problems caused by unhelpful habits. Improving posture and movement, that's a tiny part of what I'm teaching, and I believe, having read his books, it was a tiny part of what F.M. Alexander was teaching. Getting rid of unhelpful habits is a better description of what I teach. Governing the circumstances of your life is going to happen by getting rid of unhelpful habits rather than by changing your posture or the way you move. I said in my last video that we like to do the things the same way every time. F.M. Alexander said, "The vast majority of human beings live very narrow lives, doing the same things and thinking the same thoughts day by day." These things aren't just physical. 20-something years ago, when I hadn't been teaching Alexander for long, a psychotherapist who was twice my age asked my advice. He said he was watching himself making the same mistakes in his second marriage as he'd made in his first marriage. I heard a great way of describing this. We develop patterns of posture, patterns of movement, and patterns of behaviour. The Alexander world is very good at marketing itself for changing patterns of posture and patterns of movement, but less so patterns of behaviour. But I would argue that patterns of posture and movement are patterns of behaviour. I was in a cafe earlier today and a young woman sitting near me was using her laptop and writing in a book, and every time she went to write in her book she frowned and curved her back and neck to get her face closer to the notebook. You could argue that that's bad posture, but I would say that's it's a habit. It's a pattern of behaviour that she learnt at school. Or another example, bending your back to pick something up instead of folding at your knees and hips is a pattern of behaviour. It might also be a pattern of movement, but it's a pattern of behaviour. And although Alexander lessons can look like we're working with posture and movement, we're working with thinking and choices. I said in my book that traditional Alexander teachers work a lot with standing and sitting. It's called chair work, and it would be very easy to mistake it for learning to stand and sit correctly. So if it isn't about learning to stand and sit correctly, what is it about? I said, until people have an Alexander lesson, they don't think much about how they stand or sit. Then they find that they have choices about how they stand and sit. They're surprised how effortless it can be, so effortless that they can't actually feel their body. But the point is that they have to choose to do it the new way after many years of doing it the old way. Discover that you can make new choices about how you sit and stand, and then find that you can make choices about your attitude to life. One of my trainee teachers told me that he'd spent most of his adult life miserable, but he's realised he can choose not to be. Being miserable had become a pattern of behaviour for him, and Alexander helped him become aware that it was a habit that he could drop. By the way, his posture improved too, but maybe that was insignificant compared to gaining control of his happiness. In Alexander lessons, people discover they have choices about things it never occurred to them that they had choices about. Learn that the way you write in your notebook every time is a pattern of behaviour and that you can make a different choice. And then find that the way you react to your partner and used to react to your ex-partner is a pattern of behaviour, and you can make a different choice. New choices about posture and movement are not made by your body, they're made by your mind. And to make these new choices, we have to be conscious of, mindful of ourselves and what we're doing. What we're learning in Alexander lessons is not body work. It's to step outside our patterns, our habits. It's about getting off autopilot, thinking about things differently, making new choices. It allows us to expand what F.M. Alexander called very narrow lives. What do you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Improve your posture? Or learn to move more naturally? Or learn to stop doing the same thing and thinking the same thoughts every day? There's nothing wrong with wanting to improve your posture or to move more naturally, but it would be a pity to learn the Alexander technique and miss out on how it applies to every aspect of your life.